Welcome to MapleWoodian.com podcast. We have on the phone Township Committeeman, former mayor, and current candidate, Gerard Ryan. How are you, Mr. Ryan?
Very good, Joe. Good morning.
It is Gerard, right?
It is Gerard,
I'm sure you're
yeah.
called many different things when you're Jerry. Gerald, Jerry, Gerard.
I'm named after my mother's father, but everybody calls me Jerry.
And I am affinity to your Irish heritage, being half Irish. Now, for those who don't know, you've been in Maplewood how long?
I moved here in 1985, so it's 30 years. I've lived in 5 different places in town and raised 3 kids here.
Oh my God! So give us your quick background. You were born where, and how did you get from there to here?
I was born and raised on Staten Island. Came to Maplewood sort of by accident, looking for a house when I started working for Bell Labs. And just fell in love with the place at first sight, and have been here ever since. I don't work for Bell Labs anymore. I'm currently a professor in the computer science department at NJIT down in Newark, and I'm also doing work as a software developer and a software development manager for an internet startup called Wicker, which does internet security and secure messaging. So it's an interesting couple of places to work, and I really enjoy it. And I'm in my 5th place in Maplewood. I have a stepchild who's going to graduate from South Orange Middle this year and be in the high school. And it continues to be just a wonderful place to live and raise a family. And
then you have 3 other children.
Well, yeah, I have my wife and I have 6 children.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
Yeah, but we only have one still living at home. Our youngest is as I said, he's an 8th grader at South Orange Middle. He's a very talented musician. He was invited to be the only 8th grader in the high school marching band.
Get out!
So that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun sitting at the sidelines of the football games, cheering for the team and the band. It was great.
Excellent. Now, you first ran for Township Committee in, you told me, 1991?
That's correct.
And you have served since, except for a couple of years, or even less than a couple of years. You tell me.
I served for 12 years, and I was from 91 to 2003. I was mayor from 1998 through 2000.
That was my second question, yes.
And then I was off the Township Committee for 5 years. In that time, I was appointed by Mayor Profeta to the Planning Board, and I served on the Planning Board for a lot of that time. And then I was, when Ken Pettis resigned his seat on the Township Committee, I put my name forward.
That was 2008?
Yeah, I think so. So I was appointed to fill that vacancy, and I've been on 7 years. So I've been on the Township Committee for a total of 19 years. And
you were re-elected since your reappointment
twice.
Already?
Yeah, I was re-elected since the reappointment twice.
Right. So now you're running again. This is a very interesting race. Obviously, Kathy Leventhal, you've run with in the past, is not running again. You are now running with Nancy Adams, who has her own good history of service to the township.
Yes, indeed.
And against Greg Lembrick, who's a new face. What is your thought? Well, let's get it up front. One of the things a lot of people are talking about is the post office redevelopment, although it's kind of interesting that may not even be an issue by the time this election is done. But what is your position there? I know you're in favor of it, but you tell us exactly where you stand.
Sure. Well, I think that replacing that post office use, which was mostly a warehouse with a little bit of a storefront, replacing that with a mixed-use kind of development where there's commercial use on the first floor and a couple of floors of residential above it. That's something that people in the township have talked about for decades. I mean, talking about moving the post office out of that site and repurposing that site and having a better, more appropriate use there has been, sort of on everybody's radar screen for quite some time. It's been discussed the last several times we reviewed the master plan. And when the long-term lease that the post office had came to an end, the township began this very long process of open discussions and public meetings and public forums about what people wanted there. I mean, if you look around in Maplewood Village, there's an awful lot of small-scale commercial use on the first floor and residential, a couple of floors of residential on top. So I think that kind of development really fits very well in with the township. If you walk, I think I said this at a meeting. If you walk around in the village, you can already find a bunch of nice-looking brick buildings with some commercial development on the first floor and a couple of floors of residential above. So, I think a building with the right scale fits in. There's been an awful lot of discussion, at public meetings, at planning board meetings, at Village Alliance meetings, and, I think the design of what's going to be there has really evolved quite a bit, and I think that the more people talk about it, and the more people look at it, and the more public input is incorporated, I think the more people find it acceptable. I mean, there was a stretch where the building was taller than it is now, and a lot of people spoke out and said that we should take a floor off the building, and we took a floor off the building. There were a lot of people concerned about the extra parking spaces that would be taken up by residential, and then when the design of the building changed so that there was parking inside, well, then people who were opposed to it for that reason became in favor of it. So, I think everybody, there's never going to be unanimity of approval on something as important as this. But, I think I'm pretty proud of the process that we went through and the long discussions that we had and the way that the plans have evolved to incorporate public input and to make the building acceptable to the vast majority of residents. I mean, I think it's very telling that the Maplewood Village Alliance, who the township engaged in this process to sort of avoid some of the things that happened when the old police station was developed. And I think the Maplewood Village Alliance was, mostly not unanimous, because, in a contentious thing like this and a difficult decision like this, you can't expect it to be unanimous. But the vast majority of people were in favor of it. I mean, I think that says to me that we are we're in a situation with a building that's getting to a place that a lot of people will find acceptable. And frankly, I've been going door to door throughout this community. I've been knocking on doors from the Irvington border to the Milburn border, and everywhere in between. And there are people who are opposed to any change, and there are people who are really just fine with it. So I think it's a difficult set of decisions, and but I welcome being involved in these kinds of decisions, and I'm proud of the way we did it in a deliberate way and incorporated a lot of public input, and I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, and I think I've written that. I think the latest design is better than it was. It seemed like a little smaller, and the facade was a little more within the scope. And I think a lot of people like the fact that there's some green elements.
Right. Well, Joe, I used to joke that people wouldn't let me pick out the paint colors in my own house. Right.
No, I don't even try in my own house. But especially because I don't have any taste.
Well. But what I like to do, is if I look at the kind of people who are on the Maplewood Village Alliance Design Review Committee, these are designers and architects and people who really know. Yeah. So I think that it, as I said, the original designs that people saw were not as acceptable as the current designs. I frankly think that the notion of having space created between the new building and the train tracks there, and opening up a connection between the Village Coffee parking lot and the Rickleton Square lot, and improving traffic flow and improving visibility of that tunnel to the train and opening all that up, I think it's going to be terrific.
And I also think the other question, and I don't want to make this all about the post office, because you're running not just for the post office vote. Quickly, it did kind of come together quickly, and this tax abatement, which for people who don't know, it's 20% each year. The developer would not have to pay property tax for the first year, then 20%, 40% after 5 years of full property tax. There's been data put out that it would still come in with about $1 million in taxes of the first, I believe, 5 or 10 years. and then more after that. Why have this project completed so quickly, and why have the tax abatement on such prime real estate? And then we'll move on to something else.
Well, I think that when you look at what is being asked for by the town, right, and when you look at what is being asked for by, the Village Alliance and the various redevelopment plans, we're not letting somebody come in and build the building that they would have the right to build. People could build a much taller building on a much bigger footprint, but we specifically said, make it a smaller building. We specifically said, don't make it too tall and don't have such a big footprint. And it's a sort of a highly constrained problem. And the developer, both this developer and the previous developer were asking for it and said that they really couldn't get the project done without a small help over the finish line, right? So, I don't. It's a payment in lieu of taxes, right? So, I think it's not as though, as some people who are opposed to it are representing, it's not as though people aren't paying anything here, right? The township is getting, a very substantial payment for the pilot here, and so, in a just strictly from a township perspective, the town's going to do better for the first several years in terms of cash flow than we would otherwise do if we were just getting our 22 or 25% of the property tax revenue. And it's a 5-year pilot. I think I would be feeling differently about it if somebody had asked for a 30-year plan, because I don't think that would be called for. But I think this kind of small thing in the kind of constraints that we've placed on the design in terms of size and materials and all that, I think it's warranted. I think I was quoted as saying that I was a reluctant vote for it, and I think that's a fair characterization of my feeling about it. I've always been really reluctant about pilots in general. I was the last person, when we did a pilot for the development of the apartments next to DeHart Park. I was, I really did a lot of deep analysis, but that was a piece of property that had lain fallow.
Yeah, and that's a little different animal too.
And it was contaminated and all that.
That was a 30-year pilot, though.
Yeah, and that project would not have happened.
Yeah, that's a little different thing. I think most people realize that's far out of the way. That's a much bigger project.
I agree. And so I understand that some people are opposed to the pilot, but I really do think that the numbers make sense for the town, and they make sense to help get the project done. I've heard a lot of statements about this building is worth $1.8 million, or other various numbers have been bandied about. If somebody was willing to buy this building for $1.8 million, the town would have sold it to them.
Yeah.
But it's just. I think the reality is that we've placed a lot of constraints on the design appropriately. We've added a lot of public input and a lot of public scrutiny appropriately. And I think we're going to end up with a good building, and people have asked, the developers asked for a small boost in the very near term to help get the building going, and so I think it's appropriate.
Are you surprised it's such an issue, given that what state will it be in when whoever is elected takes office in January? We'll be far down the road. Is it surprising because it's not even an issue really, but it is,
I don't know, Joe. That's a good question, and I can't speak to other people's reasons for this. What I would say is, I think the expectation is that there's a contract of sale that's been signed.
Right.
There's an approval from the Maplewood Village Alliance
right.
that's been achieved. I think there's some. There might be some other changes. I might have to come back to the alliance if need be, but I think that it's pretty much. I think the last step is the planning board approval, right? So there's going to be my expectation is that we're going to see the building, the planning board, which I sit on, as the Township Committee's
Right.
representative, is going to see the plans for the building and is going to have a hearing on it in June, is my guess. There's some they're finishing up some before an application can be heard before the planning board, it has to be officially deemed complete. All the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed, and so our consultant is making sure that, as he does with all applications, that the application is complete and ready to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. We'll review it in June. It might not finish in June, and it might have to be continued into July. But I think that once the applicant has approvals in hand, assuming that they get the approvals, they can go take out building permits and begin to tear the building down.
So there could be construction before the end of the year.
I suppose there could be. Yes.
Yeah, but we also know things could come up. Let's get on to something else. Sure. The fact that you've been you have such great experience. What are some of the projects in the past? People, one of the great things about Maplewood is we have a diversity. We have a lot of people who've been here a long time, but a lot of new people who may not know your past. Feel free to give people some reminders of things you were involved in over your time on the committee.
Well, when I first got involved in politics in town, the township committee used to basically meet in a little conference room and do all its business in the conference room. So, one of the things that I'm very proud of and continue to be proud of is the way that as soon as we had enough people on the committee, we made sure that every single meeting happened outside in public. We put cameras on the wall. We broadcast everything on TV.
Right.
We publish everything on the website. There is always room to improve our communication, but I think we do a very good job of being open and public and available to everyone. There's a couple of things that I'd like to, that I'd point out of things that I did. And
you can brag because I'm asking. You're allowed to brag.
Well, thank you. I don't want to brag too much. It's unseemly. But, so we spent, we had a little bit of time where we were sort of working on facilities in town in a sort of a piecemeal fashion. And at one point I guess it was in the late 90s, it was, look, the baseball fields need a lot of work. Let's, instead of piecemealing them, let's spend a bunch of money and improve them all. And I'm proud of that work. I was very involved in the public-private partnerships that built some of the playgrounds in town. My children's names are on the plaque near the Project Playground, on the Project Playground rock in Memorial Park, and that was something that I was really proud of, and it was a lot of fun to work on. We have a historic preservation commission in this community because of my work. We had people who were concerned about preservation, and with the endorsement of the Township Committee, I basically worked with a broad group of citizens to help put together a historic preservation plan and to shepherd in an ordinance to create a historic preservation commission, which we have. We have an incredibly talented and incredibly strong historic preservation commission. We've landmarked a bunch of buildings in our community, including some of the town's own buildings, which I think is quite good and quite important because that's really the charm of our community. I'm also very proud of, I like to say that the Woodland, which used to be the Maplewood Women's Club, for a very long time, I was the lone voice in the wilderness there, right? We should preserve that building. We should landmark that building. And so, when we had a circumstance where there was a third party who was going to buy the building and preserve it, I was very excited about that. When the opportunity came up for the township to buy the building and convert it into an arts destination and add it to our inventory of properties that had that kind of use, I was extremely happy about that. We have a very, very talented and very strong arts council in town. There's a lot of really interesting things that are going on, and we're working hard to try and publicize our work and publicize the arts opportunities. And a lot of people like to say that Maplewood is an arts destination. And being an arts destination doesn't just help the arts community; it helps us all. It helps the business community. It helps the residents. Right.
Now, the Woodland, that was a little bit controversial, $1 million purchase, but we recently posted some data on money that's been spent to fix it up. It also expanded parking, and there is business. You're getting a lot of business. The rent parties there now regularly.
Well, I think
a lot of people are having events there. I think that is surprising.
I'm going to a bat mitzvah there on Saturday.
There you go. I mean, it's definitely getting the interest. I think that's surprising to a lot of people.
You know, it's I don't know if it's surprising.
No, maybe not.
It's a lovely space, right? And you know, it's really very much in demand. You know, I think. My indications are that we'll make somewhere between $70,000 and $80,000 in rental income this year, which is a good thing, I think. You know, and let me say something else about the purchase of the building and the various things that we've done as a community. You know. One of the things, in many ways, the most important thing on the township committee is establishing the budget, establishing a capital program.
Right.
The township has been below all statutory caps on expenditures and on taxes, which is something I think to be proud of. There are a number of special cases and exceptions to the rules that the town could use, and we don't. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that the town has the town spent a lot of money building a police station back 10 years ago now.
Yeah, a lot of people were a little hurt by that.
That building is being paid for, right? And if you look at our history in the last several years, every time we do something in a capital program, mm-hmm. we make sure that the amount of money that we're adding is less than the amount of money that we're paying.
Right, and I know you bring that up in meetings specifically. I recall specifically at meetings. But let me ask you about. Go ahead.
It's a good. I think it's the right practice. It's a good long-term thing to do for the community. You know, and eventually that police station is going to be paid for, and we'll be better for it. You know, and our debt load will be even lower.
Now, what about property taxes? You know, that's been since I'm sure your first day on the job.
Oh, sure.
And it's not necessarily, I think a lot of people don't understand, a lot of it is school tax, a lot of it is the state funding. What can we do? I mean, I think the township committee budget, there was about an average tax increase of $77. The school budget, more than $100. It's going up and up. What can anyone on the township committee do, or can you, to try to stem this?
You know, I think you have to look at it in a couple of different ways. I look at it in a couple of different ways, right? I mean, we have basically been having our employees do more or the same with less.
Right.
You know, we had a very painful, I should say painful, yes. We had a painful and difficult set of choices to make 6 or 7 years ago when we had to lay off a substantial number of people in the town.
Yes.
That wasn't a pleasant day to be a member of the township committee and make those kinds of decisions. You know, we've been continuing to control the growth of our expense budgets. We're continuing to control the growth of our salary lines. But you know, I think so. You have this conversation with your constituents. It's, mm-hmm. You know, it's like, you know, for the taxes I pay, I ought to get X. And those people are right.
Yeah.
You know, for the taxes that people pay here, we shouldn't be talking about the services that we're going to cut and take away. We should be talking about making sure that the quality of services is the highest possible and figuring out ways to be creative about providing them. You know, I mean, we've done a lot of really interesting things and a lot of really creative things with our neighboring communities to provide shared services, and there's always a lot more stuff to do there, right? I mean, we currently rent space to South Orange, and South Orange uses our court.
Right.
We have a joint violations bureau with South Orange. It's great, but you know, I mean, I'm looking forward to buttonholing my friend Sheena Collum now that she's taken office over in South Orange. You know, they're talking about spending $5 million to renovate their police station. Maybe they could rent space from us.
Have a joint police station?
Well, not a joint police force, because I think that's probably more complicated than anybody would want to get into. But I think there's no reason to think that we can't figure out a way of renting space, and it could be really a win-win. It would be revenue for us that we would otherwise not have, and it would be a cost reduction for them. And extra revenue from other outside sources means less revenue that we have to get from the taxpayer.
Now, Greg Lembrick, one of the things he mentioned was merging the fire departments. Is that something you would support or not like or don't know?
I think that it would be, so my idea about renting space in the police station is pretty quick and easy to figure out how to make it work, I think. I think a merged fire department is a lot more complicated, and I think you have to, honestly, I'd certainly be in favor of looking at it. It's certainly true. Any firefighter will tell you that whenever there's a working fire, all the firefighters from all around are needed to help out.
Yeah,
and everybody,
the mutual aid is really well done. Yes,
and it's extremely important to our community. I mean, when I was living on Woodland Road, there was a fire behind my house, and boy, it was great to see our friends from South Orange helping the Maplewood firefighters get things done. So, this, in a way, there's a lot of the pieces of a joint fire department are kind of already in place. So it's an idea that's worth pursuing for sure. I think you have to kind of look at what you get from it, what kind of savings you get from it relative to what it costs you. But it's certainly worth pursuing. The town's pursued it in the past on a number of different occasions, and for different reasons it was difficult to get traction on things. But I think that, with a new administration in South Orange, I think there's a lot more opportunity to have those conversations. There's other things going on, too. I mean, we have our recreation departments are very much in sync with each other, right?
There's already a lot of programs.
Sure. So,
that are joint,
there's a very, very interesting initiative going on right now between the Maplewood Recreation Department, the South Orange Recreation Department, and our friends on the school board and the school administration. What are all the facilities we have, and how can we, should we, work together to maintain them? Should we be, when South Orange kids are playing on Maplewood fields, when Maplewood kids are playing on South Orange fields, when all our kids are playing on a school field, I don't think we should be counting beans about how many kids from one town versus another. I think we should be figuring out a way to work together and jointly maintain those fields and make sure that those fields are solid and good for our entire community. So I wish that there were quick and easy, snap-your-finger solutions to a lot of these things. But I got to tell you, the easy things have already been done, right? The things that nobody would argue about, the things that are easy to work out, have been worked out. The reason that we don't have a joint fire department is there's complications, right?
Yeah, and that's a tricky area, too.
Well, and so here's the other thing, too, right? I mean, there's a lot of times when people talk about a joint fire department, they talk about laying people off and closing a fire station, which I think is a dreadful idea. So, I hope that nobody's suggesting that. But I do think that there's opportunities, and frankly, we've seen that there's opportunities. We share building inspection services with South Orange. We share various code enforcement with other towns besides South Orange and with South Orange, right? I mean, we used to have a joint health department with South Orange.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And we split it off before I moved to town, but...
and we used to be part of South Orange. I mean, way back.
Way back.
But I am also
before even our time, Joe.
Right. I'm a very proud Maplewood snob myself, so I don't want us to be, how do we not lose ourselves into South Orange and maintain our Maplewood status, but still save money these ways?
Well,
tricky balance or no?
That's an excellent question, right? And it's funny. You talk to people, and there are some people who say, "Well, we should just merge the towns." And
not at all.
Well, see, first of all, we had a referendum about that a few years ago, and it was very clear that the people of Maplewood didn't want that, right?
Which I'm glad.
But look.
But there are ways to merge services, yes.
we belong to the same churches, we belong to the same temples, we
same school district,
same school district.
Right.
We play ball on the same fields.
Yes.
Our kids have play dates, and the boundaries are arbitrary. I live literally on the border of South Orange, right? And there's no magic about walking next door versus walking here. There's no reason to think that we can't look at a service and say, South Orange does a really good job with this.
Right.
Why don't you guys do it, and we'll pay you to do it? Maplewood has this facility.
Right.
Why don't you use it and pay us for the use? And so, you can have, for lack of a better term, I think you can have a de facto merger of different services. If Maplewood does a better job providing a service, we provide it. If South Orange does a better job, they provide it. And we kind of get the best of both worlds.
Excellent. Well, let me let you go with anything else you want people to know about your time here or your plans going forward.
Want people to
because things get caught up in certain issues, but it's there's a lot of other issues.
I've been an active member of this community as a volunteer, as an appointed member of various boards, and as an elected official for a lot of my time here in the community, from working in a preschool program when my daughter was a baby to I chaired the Strollers Community Theater for a couple of years, and I did it because I really love this community, and I think that's what being a member of this community is all about. It's the people who are volunteering and who are participating in the sort of the community life, right? The township isn't the township committee. The township is the township committee and the boards and the scout troops and the Mothers and More groups and the community associations and the neighborhood associations, and I think that's kind of what I want to offer to the voters of Maplewood, right? I've been very involved for a long time. I have a record of providing, I think, good quality services to the community and being engaged in the entire community and participating in a lot of different aspects of the community. So I'd really like to continue doing that.
I think it's interesting that you've been in 5 different neighborhoods. You said 5
different homes. Yes.
How many? Is it pretty much spread around town, or?
Yes.
So people can't act like you don't know the township.
I lived on Midland Boulevard for a little while. I lived on Midland Boulevard. I lived on Hickory Drive and Ridgewood Road and Walton Avenue, and now I'm on
Hickory Drive. You and Fred Profeta on the same street?
Fred and I were neighbors. Sure.
That says a lot.
Fred and Mickey Stern and I were neighbors. Yeah.
Oh, my God. Who is that, for those who don't know?
Mickey Stern was a former member of the Township Committee. Was a member of the Township Committee back in the 90s, and then he was a federal bankruptcy judge for many years. Just a sweet, decent fellow who unfortunately passed away from cancer a couple years ago.
That would have made for some interesting block party conversation.
It did.
Let me ask you this quickly, and then the idea that people people really have to vote in the Democratic primary to have a voice because we are such a Democratic town. Doesn't that sort of limit the options for people who to vote, and the fact that a small group decides these things? Should that be changed, or? Well,
there's nothing that prevents anybody who wants to from registering to vote and to vote in the primary. So, I don't really think that there are sort of artificial barriers to getting involved and getting engaged and being able to cast a vote. So, so no, I don't see that that's an issue, right? I mean, people have conversations about how we should have nonpartisan elections, but frankly, it isn't clear to me that nonpartisan elections are any better, and certainly elections, November elections and general elections have much better turnout, right? So they're more representative. My hope is that there's an enormous turnout for this primary, because the more people turn out, the more representative the result is, and I think that would be a good thing.
And we have had independents. I mean, Kurt Kiley has had a showing in the general election. He's not running this year, but an independent can make waves, and I know none of you take the general election for granted.
No.
obviously.
Well, Mr. Profeta ran as an independent a couple of years ago, right? And so, there's not a lot of barriers to voting and to running, and there's certainly no barriers in this community to being involved. There are so many different ways that a person could volunteer to be a part of the community, and even if it's even if it's something that's not as big as being on the township committee or being on the planning board, every single person who's involved in their neighborhood association is a part of making this a great community to live in. And so I think all of the people who are volunteering and participating in the community really should be commended for making Maplewood Maplewood.
Excellent. Well, we're talking to Jerry Ryan, Township Committee veteran, candidate, former mayor, running again this year. Go vote June 2nd in the primary, and we appreciate your time, and we'll keep posting the information and wishing you good luck.
Thanks very much, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Be well.